They saw Jesus resurrected. Like, there's something different that goes on there, that they're like, this is a miracle, right? Dead people don't usually rise from the dead.
A quiet fragment of ancient parchment, long kept in the shadowed stillness of a monastic library in Ethiopia, becomes the unlikely spark for a story that reaches across centuries. Its surface, worn by the breath of history, seems to pulse with the weight of a message once intended for a world unprepared to hear it. The text appears to contain words attributed to Jesus shortly after his resurrection, preserved not as a spectacle but as a whispered remembrance carried by generations of devoted scribes. The atmosphere surrounding such a find feels almost suspended in time, as if the moment itself stretches to accommodate the gravity of what is being unveiled. What emerges from the page does not disrupt the familiar narrative, but enriches it with a depth that feels both ancient and startlingly alive, inviting reflection on the nature of transformation, purpose, and the human desire to comprehend the divine. Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more updates. The setting of the manuscript's rediscovery is a monastery perched among Ethiopian highlands, where clouds drift at eye level, and the silence of prayer is indistinguishable from the wind. The monks who guard these manuscripts do so with generational devotion, treating each text not as an artifact, but as a living witness. When they brought forward a little-known codex rumored to contain resurrection-era teachings, it became clear that the world was about to confront a perspective lost for 2 millennia. There is no declaration, no dramatic pronouncement by those who revealed it. Instead, the unveiling feels as calm as dawn spreading over stone walls and terraced fields. The quietness of the moment stands in deliberate contrast to the magnitude of the ideas embedded in the text. Within the manuscript, the scene that unfolds is not one of spectacle but of profound intimacy. The text describes Jesus standing among his followers, not radiant in a way that overwhelms but illuminated by a simplicity that disarms. The emphasis is not on physical marvels, but on an inward transformation, as though everything about him points away from the extraordinary event of resurrection and towards something even more enduring. His presence does not silence the room with supernatural awe, but fills it with a kind of steady, anchoring clarity. The followers around him, startled yet comforted, seem to experience a moment where fear dissolves into recognition. Their shock shifts into a deepened understanding, as if seeing him alive after death becomes less an impossibility and more a completion of what he had always taught. The manuscript's narrative style is starkly human. It describes confusion, questions, hesitations, and the lingering tremors of grief still clinging to those who had witnessed the crucifixion. Jesus speaks slowly, not with urgency but with patience shaped by compassion. His message focuses on inner renewal, telling them that resurrection is not solely an event of the body, but a calling to awaken something within themselves. The idea that transformation begins from the soul outward becomes the heart of his message. He explains that to rise is not merely to live again, but to live differently, to embody the courage to align one's actions with one's truest convictions. The text lingers on his encouragement that every person carries a spark capable of rising even from the darkest moments. His followers are urged to recognize that despair can be the soil for renewal when met with intention and faith. This emphasis on inner awakening gives the account a tone that blends instruction with gentle reassurance. The message does not challenge them with demands. It invites them to step into a deeper version of themselves. The idea that resurrection is not an isolated miracle, but a pattern woven into the fabric of human experience, becomes a central theme in the manuscript. One of the most striking elements is his insistence that love remains the only force capable of bridging the gap between the seen and unseen. Love, he says, survives death because it originates from something unbound by physical limitations. The manuscript portrays him explaining that love is not a feeling reserved for brief, warm moments, but an active force that shapes choices, responses, and the courage to forgive. He tells them that love persists where fear collapses, and that to walk in love is to walk in alignment with the divine intention for humanity. The idea takes on a weight that feels both ancient and timely, stirring a longing for compassion in a world often fractured by misunderstanding. He also speaks about clarity, emphasizing that people often search for signs, wonders, or proofs, not realizing that the most profound revelations emerge from silence. In the text, he invites his followers to be attentive to quiet moments, to listen beyond the noise of ordinary life. He explains that divine wisdom often arrives gently, like a whisper, and that those who cultivate stillness are most prepared to receive it. The notion that spiritual understanding cannot be forced, but must be welcomed through presence and attention resonates deeply within the manuscript. It offers a perspective that feels contemplative, urging readers to consider how much of life is missed in haste. The manuscript describes Jesus encouraging them to forgive those who had wronged him, not as a dismissal of suffering, but as a declaration of freedom. He explains that forgiveness is not an act of submission, but a reclamation of inner peace. Holding on to bitterness chains the heart, while releasing it opens space for transformation. His followers, still grappling with the trauma of recent events, wrestle with the enormity of this instruction. Yet his words carry a calm authority, suggesting that forgiveness is not a burden but a path toward healing. This intimate portrayal of forgiveness highlights its role not as a moral requirement, but as a profound doorway into peace. Another theme woven into the account is the idea of mission. Jesus reminds his followers that fear often prevents people from stepping into their purpose. He tells them that fear distorts reality by magnifying obstacles and shrinking possibilities. To rise above fear is to reclaim the truth of who they are. The manuscript focuses on this internal battle, portraying it as universal. What they are called to do must grow from who they are becoming. He does not push them toward action, but guides them toward alignment, suggesting that true mission emerges when one's inner life reflects divine wisdom. Mission in this view becomes less about tasks and more about transformation. The manuscript continues with his reflections on unity. He speaks of the human tendency to divide, label, and judge, often forgetting the fundamental interconnectedness shared by all. He says that separation is the greatest illusion and that understanding one's place within the greater whole brings humility and compassion. The unity he describes is not rote conformity, but a recognition of shared origin and shared destiny. This idea carries implications that extend far beyond the intimate circle of followers, suggesting a vision for humanity rooted in mutual respect and spiritual cohesion. One passage offers a vivid depiction of Jesus explaining that truth is not a weapon, but a light. Truth illuminates rather than wounds. He reminds them that truth liberates not because it proves one side right or another wrong, but because it dispels the shadows that confuse the heart. He urges them to seek truth not in arguments or debates, but within their own soul's quiet awareness. This portrayal of truth as a gentle, clarifying force stands in contrast to the way truth is often used to divide. The text seems to emphasize that understanding truth requires humility rather than certainty. The manuscript gives attention to the way he describes peace. Peace, he says, is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of groundedness. True peace arises from aligning one's inner world with divine wisdom, creating a stability that external circumstances cannot disrupt. His followers, shaken by recent events, listen as though these words offer them a lifeline. The account introduces peace not as a passive state, but as a cultivated discipline, a state of being that must be nurtured through reflection, integrity, and the willingness to release fear. One of the more mysterious sections describes Jesus explaining that every life has seasons, each shaping the soul in different ways. Some seasons bring abundance, others loss, some clarity, others confusion. Yet all seasons serve a purpose within the larger tapestry of growth. This cyclical understanding of life offers comfort to those who felt overwhelmed by the unpredictability of recent events. He teaches that one must embrace each season with openness, trusting that divine intention moves even through what feels painful or chaotic. The theme invites contemplation about how one finds meaning within change. The manuscript describes him urging them not to cling to his physical presence, but to recognize the spirit that continues among them. He explains that the body is a vessel, but the essence of his mission resides beyond bodily limitations. His words encourage them to look not backward, but inward. They must carry forward the teachings, not by leaning on his physical form, but by embodying the spirit he has revealed. This shift from physical presence to spiritual continuity becomes a pivotal moment in the narrative. It challenges his followers to mature in their understanding, transforming dependence into empowerment. A powerful moment arises when he speaks about the ability of each person to embody light. He describes light as inner clarity, compassion, and truth expressed through daily action. Light is not an external radiance, but an inner alignment that influences the world through presence. He insists that every person has the capacity to shine, not to draw attention to themselves, but to illuminate the path for others. This understanding of light becomes a central metaphor in the manuscript. It portrays the human journey as one of gradual brightening, where each act of kindness becomes a beam cutting through darkness. The tone shifts into an intimate reflection on faith. Jesus explains that faith is not blind trust, but attunement to divine intention. Faith is a posture of openness, a willingness to walk toward the unknown with confidence that one is not alone. He encourages them to cultivate faith through practice rather than mere belief. Faith grows in moments of uncertainty, when one chooses hope over despair. The manuscript offers a portrayal of faith that feels organic and deeply human. It suggests that faith matures through experience, becoming stronger through each challenge encountered. The manuscript's depiction of hope is equally evocative. Hope, he says, is the seed of new beginnings. It does not deny suffering, but insists that suffering does not have the final word. Hope allows the heart to imagine possibilities beyond immediate circumstances. He describes hope as a companion for the weary, a beacon for those navigating darkness. His followers listen with a mixture of sorrow and anticipation, sensing that hope is being offered not as a fleeting comfort, but as a transformative force capable of reshaping their understanding of what is possible. There is a moment of profound stillness described in the manuscript where Jesus pauses, allowing his words to settle into the minds of his listeners. The silence itself becomes part of the teaching. It speaks of contemplation, of allowing truth to take root before being acted upon. The scene underscores the value of stillness in spiritual growth. Wisdom does not flourish in hurried minds, but in hearts that know how to listen. This extended pause becomes a symbolic turning point in the text, marking a transition from instruction to embodiment. Another passage describes Jesus addressing the weight of grief that still lingered among them. He acknowledges their pain, recognizing that witnessing death, even when followed by resurrection, leaves emotional scars. He explains that grief is not a weakness, but a testament to love. It reveals the depth of what the heart cherishes. He teaches them to allow grief to soften rather than harden their hearts, to let it deepen compassion rather than close them off. This perspective on grief offers solace, inviting readers to see sorrow not as a burden, but as part of a larger spiritual journey. A gentle hush settles over the imagined chamber, where the manuscript scene continues to unfold, as though every breath of air holds its own meaning. What follows expands the moment without revisiting anything already spoken, moving deeper into the emotional atmosphere, the symbolism, and the spiritual weight surrounding what the manuscript describes. The followers, still gathered close, are portrayed as experiencing a shift that moves far beyond astonishment, entering a realm where understanding grows through layers rather than declarations. The text begins to focus on what is happening not just around Jesus, but within those who are present, capturing the raw human dimensions of an encounter that stretches every boundary of comprehension. The manuscript lingers on the way each follower perceives him differently, as though his presence reveals something unique to each heart. One sees a reminder of mercy, recalling mistakes previously believed unforgivable. Another feels the stirring of resilience, remembering moments when fear had nearly broken their resolve. Yet another senses the quiet unveiling of purpose, a recognition that life is not simply unfolding, but calling. These individualized reflections create a tapestry of human emotion woven around a single extraordinary figure. It is not a uniform experience, but a diverse array of inner awakenings, each ignited by the same presence, yet shaped by personal history. This part of the manuscript suggests that the followers are struck not by the visual sight of him, but by the atmosphere he carries. The air feels charged, not with tension but with clarity, as though each person becomes aware of their own thoughts with unusual vividness. The clarity seems to reach beyond emotion and enters the realm of conviction, pushing each follower to confront the truth of who they have been and who they may become. This moment becomes less about witnessing a resurrected figure and more about witnessing the unfolding of their own souls. The manuscript describes something akin to a deep inner stillness within the followers, a silence rising from the depths of their being rather than descending upon them. This silence allows them to perceive layers of meaning behind his words, nuances that cannot be rushed or spoken directly. The text illustrates how silence itself becomes a form of teaching, shaping the heart's ability to receive truth. In this stillness, their minds travel inward, encountering realizations and questions they had not dared to articulate. The stillness acts like a mirror where hidden fears, longings, and hopes become visible, illuminated by the glow of insight. As the scene continues, the manuscript shifts into describing the transformation that begins to take hold within each person. It portrays transformation not as an abrupt change, but as a gentle unfolding, like light gradually rising within a dim room. The sense of awakening takes different shapes. Some feel a sudden loosening of long-held burdens. Others experience an unexpected sense of direction. Still others sense a deep inner cleansing, as if the confusion clouding their thoughts is being washed away. This transformation is neither dramatic nor forced. It simply occurs as naturally as breath, suggesting that his presence awakens something already alive within them. The manuscript suggests that the followers begin to understand something subtle yet profound, that the resurrection is not merely a moment of divine intervention, but a revelation of possibilities hidden within the human spirit. It portrays the moment as unveiling a capacity within every person to transcend limitations, to rise from inner forms of death, fear, despair, guilt, into states of clarity, courage, and purpose. This understanding does not come through instruction, but through experience, as though witnessing him alive after death unlocks an inner memory of spiritual potential long forgotten. This section describes the emotional tension lingering among the followers, but not in a way that suggests conflict. Instead, it portrays the tension as the natural pulling of the heart when confronted with truth that demands response. The text suggests that truth awakens a sense of responsibility, not in the sense of burden, but in the sense of opportunity. They feel the invitation embedded in his presence, a call not voiced in commands but expressed through the very nature of the moment. This call urges them to move beyond survival and into intentional living. The manuscript shifts to describing the environment around them, not in terms of physical details, but in terms of atmosphere. The air is depicted as having a quiet vibrancy, as though the space itself participates in the unfolding revelation. It speaks of a subtle harmony, a feeling that everything in the room is aligned with the truth being revealed. The atmosphere becomes symbolic of inner alignment, a reflection of what occurs when human hearts tune themselves to spiritual reality. This harmony is not portrayed as mystical spectacle, but as a deeply grounded sense of coherence. Attention then turns to the way time is experienced in the manuscript. The followers perceive the moment as stretching beyond ordinary boundaries, as though time itself is pausing to make room for understanding. This altered perception of time becomes symbolic of the difference between earthly rhythms and spiritual rhythms. Earthly time moves in narrow sequences. Spiritual time expands with meaning. In this expanded sense of time, they feel less like observers and more like participants in a moment that transcends the linear unfolding of events. The manuscript continues by describing an emerging sense of acceptance among the followers. Acceptance does not refer to resignation, but to the willingness to embrace what is being revealed. They begin to accept the transformation occurring within themselves, the calling placed upon them, and the truth that resurrection signifies more than the reversal of death. Acceptance becomes an inner posture, a readiness to align one's life with newfound understanding. This acceptance softens their fears and strengthens their resolve. The narrative shifts to emphasize the power of presence. Jesus does not instruct through force or persuasion. He teaches through the simple yet profound act of being. His presence demonstrates peace, clarity, compassion, and purpose, embodying the truths he desires them to grasp. The manuscript suggests that presence itself becomes a language, one that communicates beyond words. His presence becomes a living example of spiritual integration, showing them what it means to be fully aligned with divine intent. The text then explores the internal struggles some of the followers experience. Even as understanding grows, they wrestle with the remnants of doubt, uncertainty, and memories of their failures. The manuscript describes this struggle as natural, part of the human condition. What matters is not the disappearance of struggle, but the willingness to face it honestly. Jesus does not chastise them for their doubts. Instead, his calm assurance creates a space where doubt can be acknowledged without shame. This compassionate acceptance becomes a lesson in itself, that transformation does not require perfection, only openness. The manuscript moves deeper into describing the emotional landscape of the moment. There is awe but not fear, reverence but not distance. The relationship between Jesus and his followers is presented as intimate, built on trust rather than hierarchy. This intimacy becomes vital, allowing them to receive his message not as command but as shared truth. The emotional warmth in the room arises not only from his presence but from the bond created through shared trials, shared devotion, and shared awakening. Another section describes a moment where his followers begin to sense the magnitude of what lies ahead. Not in terms of external events, but in terms of internal growth. They realize that receiving the truth is only the beginning. Embodying it is the ongoing journey. The manuscript captures this dawning realization with careful nuance, portraying the mixture of anticipation and sobriety that accompanies spiritual calling. They sense that the transformation begun in this moment will continue to shape their lives in ways they cannot yet imagine. The manuscript then turns its attention to the subtle shift in the followers' posture, not physically but spiritually. They begin to sit with greater steadiness, breathe more deeply, and listen more openly. This shift reflects inner alignment. The posture of the body mirrors the posture of the heart. This detail underscores the manuscript's focus on holistic transformation, mind, heart, and spirit moving into harmony. A particularly evocative portion describes the emergence of gratitude among the followers. Gratitude arises not from relief or joy alone, but from an overwhelming recognition of truth. They feel grateful not just for his presence, but for the clarity blossoming within them. This gratitude softens their hearts and opens them further to transformation. Gratitude becomes a form of spiritual awakening, a response to the gift of understanding. The manuscript then portrays Jesus reflecting their emotions back to them through his gaze, though not spoken as dialogue. His eyes are described as conveying recognition. He sees their fears, their potential, their struggles. This act of recognition becomes transformative because it reveals to them that they are fully known. To be known without judgment awakens a profound sense of worthiness, prompting them to step more boldly into the journey being set before them. A section explores the symbolic imagery unfolding around them, not as supernatural signs, but as internal interpretations. The mind of each follower translates the moment into imagery resonant with their personal experiences. One may envision a path illuminated for the first time, another may feel as though a heavy cloak has been lifted, another may sense a doorway opening. These symbolic interpretations help them grasp the meaning of the moment in a way that transcends literal description. The manuscript uses these inner images to illustrate the depth of the transformation taking place. The narrative describes an emerging sense of unity among the followers, but this unity does not erase individuality. Instead, it becomes a harmony of distinct voices, each carrying a unique resonance yet aligned with a common truth. This unity is portrayed as an essential part of spiritual growth, community rooted not in sameness, but in shared purpose. The manuscript suggests that unity is strengthened not by agreement, but by mutual recognition of the divine within each person. The atmosphere described in the manuscript deepens further, as though the moment becomes saturated with meaning. The followers feel their senses heightened, not in a physical sense, but in awareness. They notice small shifts in emotion, nuance in each other's expressions, and the subtle energy in the room. This heightened awareness reflects a spiritual awakening where perception becomes more attuned to layers of reality previously overlooked. This awareness plants within them the seed of discernment, an essential tool for what lies ahead. The manuscript goes on to describe how courage begins to blossom among them. This courage is not brash or loud, but steady and grounded. It arises from the realization that they are not alone, that the truth revealed to them is not fragile but enduring. Courage becomes the natural response to understanding, the fruit of clarity. This courage does not erase fear, but transforms the relationship with fear, turning it from a barrier into a teacher. A section dwells on the theme of surrender, not surrender as defeat, but as openness. The followers begin to release their need for certainty, accepting that truth can lead them into unknown territories. This surrender brings a surprising sense of peace, freeing them from the weight of controlling outcomes. They begin to trust that their path will unfold with purpose, guided by the truth revealed in this moment. The manuscript continues by describing the growing awareness of the sacredness of the moment. The followers sense that they are standing on holy ground, not because of location, but because of transformation. The sacredness arises from the alignment of human hearts with divine truth. This awareness fills them with reverence, not fear, elevating the moment into a spiritual milestone that will ripple through their lives long after the moment ends. A soft quiet deepens in the room described by the manuscript, as though the very space inhales and holds its breath. What follows in this extended moment turns its attention toward the subtle inner movements occurring within each follower, shifts so delicate they border on the indescribable, yet powerful enough to alter the trajectory of their lives. The manuscript's tone becomes even more reflective, capturing the internal transitions that unfold not through external signs, but through the gradual illumination of the heart. The followers begin to sense an emerging strength that does not resemble force or assertiveness, but takes the form of steadiness. This strength feels rooted, as if an anchor has been placed within them. It allows them to sit more firmly within themselves, no longer swayed so easily by the currents of fear or uncertainty. The manuscript suggests that this strength arises from the revelation that truth is not fragile. It does not need defending through aggression or anxiety. Instead, truth possesses its own quiet resilience that invites trust. As this inner strength settles, some followers experience a new clarity in how they perceive themselves. The manuscript describes them beginning to let go of distorted self-images shaped by past mistakes, social expectations, or lingering shame. They are not suddenly transformed into perfected individuals. Rather, they begin to see the possibility of living with authenticity. This new self-perception opens space for compassion toward themselves, recognizing that growth is a journey, not a demand. The moment becomes a mirror reflecting not who they were, but who they are capable of becoming. In this atmosphere, a quiet sense of belonging begins to emerge among them. This belonging is not rooted in shared identity or background, but in shared awakening. It is a recognition that each person stands at the threshold of transformation, and that this shared threshold binds them together in a way previously unimaginable. They begin to sense themselves as part of something larger than individual hopes or fears, an unfolding movement grounded in truth and purpose. This sense of belonging nurtures a profound security, a feeling that they no longer navigate life in isolation. The manuscript then shifts into describing a heightened sensitivity to meaning. The followers begin to perceive depth in details that previously seemed ordinary: the curve of a gesture, the rhythm of breath, the quiet between words. Meaning no longer hides in grandeur. It is found in subtlety. This sensitivity suggests that the experience of awakening sharpens perception, teaching them to listen beyond surface noise. They begin to sense that every moment holds potential insight, every interaction carries significance, and every thought can either align or misalign with truth. A sense of gentle anticipation begins to take shape within them, distinct from anxiety or expectation. This anticipation arises from the recognition that life is unfolding toward purpose, that the unknown ahead is not void, but possibility. They do not know what will come, yet they feel compelled toward it, drawn by a sense of alignment rather than pressure. The manuscript portrays this anticipation as a quiet flame, steady and warm, illuminating the next steps they have yet to take. As the moment deepens, the followers begin to realize that something within them has awakened to permanence. They feel as though an inner door has opened, one that cannot be closed again, not because they are forced forward, but because they can no longer return to who they once were. This internal shift is not dramatic but irrevocable, signaling that the understanding gained in this moment has woven itself into the fabric of their being. The manuscript concludes this portion with an image of inward expansion. Each follower feels their inner world widening, making space for truth, compassion, and purpose to take root. This expansion carries a quiet assurance that growth will continue, guided by the transformation now unfolding within them. The scene rests in this sense of widening, suggesting that the story is not ending but arriving at a beginning shaped by newfound clarity and awakened spirit. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Ethiopian Bible revealing hidden words? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.